He never heard a single tick, not one beep, bell, or breaking news alert. But somehow, he still learned to dance with the market like it was music made just for him. In a world obsessed with noise, Luca Méndez made silence his trading edge. Welcome back to Forex Success Story, the podcast where we don't count lumbos, we count grit. Where what matters isn't where you started, but how far you've crawled. This is where janitors, single moms, burned-out pastors, and code-slinging night owls have all come to find redemption through discipline. Today, we meet a man who was born into absolute quiet, but found his voice in the charts. Luca Méndez entered the world on a warm July morning in 1999 in a small suburb just outside Barcelona. His parents were both musicians, his father a cellist in a local symphony, his mother a piano teacher. Their apartment was always filled with classical music, and even before Luca was born, his mother would press headphones against her belly, playing Chopin and Debussy like lullabies. But the child who arrived into their lives would never hear a single note. At 6 months, doctors confirmed what the couple had feared. Luca was profoundly deaf. No hope of recovery. Total auditory silence. The music they loved, the world they lived in, he would never know it. At first, they mourned. But over time, they adapted. Their son didn't respond to lullabies, but he smiled when sunlight danced across the floor. He didn't react to toys with bells or whistles, but he stared intently at shadows and shapes. He wasn't born with hearing, but he came into the world with an uncanny sensitivity to rhythm, just not the kind you hear, the kind you see. Growing up, Luca was never easy to categorize. He was neither withdrawn nor outgoing. He wasn't angry about his deafness. He simply existed in a different gear than most of his peers. He paid attention to things they ignored, a twitch in someone's eyebrow, the half-second pause before a hand moved, the micro-expressions of uncertainty or joy. While other kids relied on words, Luca built an entire system of understanding from movement. A flicker of motion was enough. He read the world in waves. But school was hard. His small town wasn't built for difference. Teachers weren't trained in sign language. Classmates didn't understand why Luca didn't laugh at jokes or answer questions. He spent years in speech therapy that yielded little, sat in the back of rooms where he couldn't read lips, and came home exhausted from the constant decoding of the world around him. Yet even in isolation, he had his patterns. Every night, while his parents unwound with music they still hoped he'd someday feel, Luca sat at the kitchen table, drawing. He didn't draw people or cartoons, he drew lines. Patterns. Shapes. Spirals inside spirals. He was fascinated by symmetry, by tension, by balance, by imbalance. Sometimes his drawings looked like sound waves. Other times, they looked eerily like price charts. But at the time, nobody noticed. Not even Luca. When he turned 19, things changed. It was a lazy summer afternoon in 2018 when his older cousin Javier came to visit from Madrid. Luca, now a teenager fluent in both Spanish Sign Language and written English, watched as Javier fiddled with a glowing chart on his laptop. Lines zigzagged across a black screen. Red candles. Green candles. Luca was mesmerized. "What is that?" he sighed. Javier grinned, typing back, "Forex. I'm trading currencies. Trying, at least. It's like gambling, but more frustrating." Luca didn't laugh. He couldn't stop staring. In that moment, everything he loved, movement, rhythm, tension, uncertainty, was right there on the screen. It didn't talk. It didn't shout. It just moved. And for Luca, that was enough. That night, after Javier left, Luca couldn't sleep. He pulled up his old Android tablet, typed Forex charts into Google, and fell into a hole that would take years to climb out of, and redefine everything he thought he knew about purpose. He wasn't looking for money. He wasn't chasing dreams. He just wanted to understand the rhythm, the movement. He wanted to hear the market with his eyes. Luca's journey didn't begin with capital. It began with confusion. Forex, he quickly discovered, was a world built on words and noise. Trading educators screamed strategies on YouTube videos without subtitles. Podcast hosts praised their audible alerts and screaming indicators. Discord servers were chaos, floods of messages in shorthand English, moving too fast for even the fastest typist to catch up. Forums were better, but filled with acronyms that meant nothing to him. FOMC, SL Hunt, ICT, boy. It wasn't just a new language, it was a loud one. But Luca didn't stop. He screenshotted entire articles and fed them through Google Translate, sentence by sentence. He copied trading strategy PDFs and ran them through text readers, converting the audio to transcripts. When YouTube videos had no captions, he paused every 3 seconds, studied the visuals, and guessed what was happening. He built his own curriculum, one page at a time. He wasn't interested in gurus who flashed their MT4 screenshots or sold Lamborghini dreams. Their performances were built for sound, for drama. Luca didn't trust noise. He didn't even recognize its pull. Instead, he gravitated towards static chart breakdowns, annotated images where the candles told the story. To Luca, a bullish engulfing pattern wasn't just a signal. It was a crescendo. A consolidation box wasn't boredom. It was silence before a storm. He began collecting these snapshots, screenshots from forums, image tutorials, even blurry Reddit posts. He saved them in folders, printed some, and stuck them to his wall like visual scripture. Every morning, before his freelance graphic work began, he'd sit and study them like sacred texts. He also began doing something strange, something no mentor ever told him to do. He'd open a live chart, pick a random spot from 3 weeks ago, and scroll forward, candle by candle. Slowly, one at a time, watching price develop like a film in slow motion. No sound, no indicator, just structure. He'd pause after every few candles and ask himself, with fingers on his keyboard, what is the market feeling? Not, what should I do? Not, where's the trade? But what is the story here? This practice became his ritual. He called it silent playback. Every day, 2 hours. No alerts, no distractions, just him and price. He didn't know it yet, but Luca wasn't just learning how to trade. He was tuning his entire nervous system to respond to pressure in a way most traders never master, by letting go of prediction and leaning into pattern recognition with surgical calm. He didn't have mentors, but he had focus. He didn't have voice chats, but he had observation. And slowly, like the grind of wind against a stone, he began to sharpen. By mid-2019, he downloaded a free demo account and began entering trades, purely off structure. No indicators, no economic calendar, just raw price. The first 100 trades were a disaster, but each one came with screenshots, notes, reflections. He annotated not just his entries and exits, but his internal reactions. Felt anxious before clicking sell. Was too eager after 3 green candles. Didn't trust my zone. Should have walked away. His screen became his confessional, and it never judged him. The charts didn't care about his hearing. They only responded to patience. By the winter of 2019, Luca's bedroom no longer looked like a bedroom. It looked like a mind turned inside out. The pale green walls were covered with screenshots, hundreds of them. Some printed in color at a nearby copy shop, others scrawled in pencil on printer paper. Above his desk, the euro to US dollar 15-minute chart repeated itself like wallpaper. Failed breakouts, trend shifts, liquidity grabs. Each one came with a date, a question, and a note. He called it the wall of mistakes. But to him, they weren't failures, they were footprints. Most people erase their losses. Luca studied them like a path to language. He began to see things no textbook explained. Why candles breathed in waves before breaking a level. Why false breakouts always return to the same zone. Why certain times of day, even in silence, carried momentum like a rhythm section building toward a drop. He didn't listen to the London Open. He felt it. His cousin, who first showed him TradingView, once visited and stared at the walls in disbelief. "You're treating this like art school," he joked. Luca smiled, typed a reply on his phone, and held it up. Music school. He finally opened a small live account in early 2020, 400 euros, scraped together from freelance UI gigs and designing logos for small businesses in Barcelona. Most traders saw small capital as a curse. For Luca, it was a sacred constraint. It meant he could not afford to gamble. He had to make every position a lesson. He didn't trade every day, sometimes not even every week. He followed the same process each time. Map zones on the 1H chart. Wait for liquidity sweep or clear rejection wick. Confirm with market structure shift. Enter only on retest. No impulsive clicks. He journaled the time of day, the weather, his emotional state before placing the trade. He often paused just before execution to breathe. Not to calm nerves. He wasn't nervous, but to be present. And yet, he lost. Often. Within 3 months, the 400 euros became 315 euros. Most people would have quit. But to Luca, this wasn't a setback. It was calibration. The trades weren't just red or green. They were signals of refinement. He began rewatching his losing trades candle by candle, the same way musicians replay failed rehearsals. He marked up every poor entry with annotations in red pen. Impatience, FLMO, didn't wait for close, wasn't present. Each loss became a verse, each correction a chorus. Then something changed. In one particularly quiet February week, Luca entered 3 trades. All followed his exact criteria. All used a strict 1-to-2 risk-to-reward ratio. All closed in profit. He didn't cheer, didn't post. He just printed the trades, marked them in green, and pinned them on the corner of the wall labeled, "Not perfect, but aligned." That was his phrase, aligned. Not profitable, not right, aligned. And over time, that wall of green trades slowly began to expand. He wasn't just becoming a trader. He was becoming a master of flow, a student of structure, of quiet conviction. And in a world where everyone screamed strategies and signals, Lucas sat in silence and listened harder than anyone. By the summer of 2020, something strange had happened. Luca no longer needed to translate every article word for word with Google Translate. He no longer had to pause YouTube videos every 5 seconds to read the automatic captions. He no longer needed explanations for terms like order block or market structure shift. He was thinking in charts. His native language was no longer Spanish Sign Language. It was price action. It wasn't just technical ability. It was intuition sharpened through exposure. Like someone who has spent years watching clouds suddenly predicting storms before the forecast does. Luca could feel when a market was coiling. He'd notice subtle hesitations in candles, micro indecision at key zones. His favorite setups weren't big breakouts or flashy reversals. They were what he called whispers, tiny, deliberate pauses before price whispered its next move. He created folders of screenshots with names like Wick Confessions, Quiet Aggression, The Tap Before the Slam. This wasn't trading. It was poetry in motion. He still hadn't told many people what he was doing. His parents supported him, but didn't fully understand. His old schoolmates thought he was still doing that chart thing. And the deaf community forums he occasionally visited didn't know what to make of it either. But Luca didn't need validation. He needed rhythm. And it was showing up in the form of steady, compounding skill. That autumn, he hit a milestone. His 315 euro account climbed back to 400 euros, then 550 euros, then 800 euros. By Christmas, it stood at 1,300 euros. Not fast, but clean and deeply earned. He never over-leveraged. He never revenge traded. His daily routine looked almost monastic. 6 a.m. wake up, 30 minutes of stretching and coffee, 1 hour marking zones on euro to US dollar and pound sterling to US dollar. No trade if there was no clean setup by 11 o'clock. Midday walk, afternoon journaling, evening chart review with screenshots and handwritten reflections. He didn't scalp frantically. He meditated through market sessions. One December day, he noticed price forming an ascending wedge on pound sterling to US dollar. Liquidity was building above a prior high, and he saw a subtle deceleration of bullish candles as they approached resistance. Most traders would have shorted impulsively. Luca waited. He watched the price fake out, tap the liquidity pool, reject, and form a bearish engulfing candle on the 15-minute chart. He entered short on the retest. The trade ran 60 pips in under 2 hours. Luca didn't smile or clap. He simply marked the moment in his journal. Patience is not silence. Patience is preparation. He wasn't just making money. He was becoming fluent. And in that fluency, a new door opened, one that would take him beyond his little room, beyond screenshots and solitude, into the world of professional trading. By early 2022, Luca felt ready for something more. Not in an ambitious, I want to make millions kind of way, but with the quiet knowing of someone who had outgrown their current boundaries. His 1,300 euros personal account had taught him discipline. He was averaging 3% monthly returns, risk-controlled and consistent. The next step wasn't scaling his own capital, it was earning the right to manage someone else's. So he applied for a prop firm challenge. No video interviews, no calls, just performance. Perfect. The moment the challenge began, His entire mindset narrowed like a camera lens. The rules were clear: 10% profit target in 30 days, 5% max drawdown. Most traders rushed to hit the goal. Not Luca. He took 2 trades in the first week. 1 win, 1 break-even. He was trailing behind in the race, on paper. But in his mind, it wasn't a race at all. It was a sonata. Trade 3, Euro to US dollar. Price tapped into an old order block, reacted with imbalance, and left a bullish rejection wick. Luca waited for a body close confirmation, then entered long with a 1:2 risk to reward. Winner, plus 2.5%. Trade 4, no entry. Trade 5, stopped out, small loss. Trade 6, a textbook 3-drive pattern on pound sterling to US dollar during London session, plus 3.2%. By day 28, he hit 10.2% return. 0 rule violations. Minimal drawdown. 1 lot size. Flawless journaling. He passed. No noise. No team. No let's go tweets. Just a confirmation email at 2:14 p.m. on a Thursday. He stared at the screen for a long time. Then he leaned back in his chair and exhaled. Not relief, acceptance. As if the market had handed him a key. He was now managing a 50,000 euros funded account. But more than that, he was managing confidence. The kind built on solitude, scrutiny, and quiet obsession. He didn't tell his cousin. Didn't tell old friends. But that night, he printed his funded certificate and taped it under his wall of screenshots. He captioned it in Sharpie. Not a prize. A permission. Then he turned off the lights and went to bed. No celebration. Just quiet sleep. He'd be up early for London Open, after all. If Luca's wall of printed trade losses had once been a symbol of failure, it was now something else entirely, an archive of growth. From that narrow Barcelona apartment with a single window and a makeshift desk, his walls had become a mosaic of red ink, annotations, and hard-earned understanding. Most people would have ripped those pages down after getting funded. Not Luca. He added to it, because pain was his teacher, and he never erased the lessons. The funded account began just as his personal one had, slowly, methodically. He wasn't out to impress anyone. The prop firm gave him access to 50,000 euros, but in his mind, it was still the same 400 euros from 3 years earlier. Precious, fragile, not to be touched without reverence. His first month brought in 1,100 euros. Nothing earth-shattering, but real, clean, all based on 5 trades. His second month, 670 euros. He was frustrated, briefly, and caught himself staring too long at others on Twitter who posted their 5,000 euros, 10,000 euro days. He muted them, literally, clicked mute on 20 accounts that afternoon. He reminded himself, sound had never helped him before. It wasn't going to start now. Instead, he turned back to his wall of losses, picked 3 trades from his early days and reanalyzed them. Each had been taken too early, entered without structure, fueled by impatience, not information. He realized something. Even now, funded and modestly profitable, he wasn't immune. He still had emotional triggers. They just disguised themselves better. So he created a ritual. Before every trading day, he'd spend 5 minutes staring at his oldest, worst loss. A long position on pound sterling to US dollar that reversed so violently, it had triggered his stop and reversed again before he'd blinked. He wrote at the bottom of that printout, "The market speaks first. You don't." It became his mantra. By month 4, he was invited to scale his funded account to 100,000 euros, then 200,000 euros. But something shifted. He didn't feel more successful. He felt more still. That stillness became his edge. And it came not just from the charts, but from the one thing that had defined his whole life, the absence of sound. While others were being rattled by Fed speakers, NFP surprises, Twitter rumors, Discord groupthink, and YouTube market breakdowns, Luca was in silence. By default, by design, he began journaling not only trades, but reactions, not to the market, but to himself. Felt fear when price stalled near entry. Waited. It passed. Saw a setup. Didn't trust it. Skipped it. Price would have hit TP. Still no regret. Tempted to enter at second retest. Knew it was emotional. Paused. Entry missed. Dignity not. In the absence of outside noise, he could hear the market better than ever. But more than that, he could hear himself. By the end of 2023, Luca's equity curve wasn't parabolic. It was steady, clean, a slow stairway upward. And one night, staring at his balance sheet and sipping chamomile tea, he typed something into his digital journal. "I don't need to be rich. I just need to never betray my rhythm." By the beginning of 2024, Luca had traded for nearly 5 years. He wasn't famous. He didn't sell a course. He hadn't gone viral. But his accounts were alive. 2 funded accounts worth a total of 200,000 euros under management, and his personal account now sitting quietly at 11,850 euros. He never posted profits. He didn't need applause. He needed process. Routine had become sacred. He would wake at 6:30 a.m., stretch for 10 minutes in silence, make a simple breakfast, and sit at his desk 30 minutes before the London Open. No headphones, no live streams, just candles. He always said, structure before signal, context before entry. There was never rush in Luca's world, only rhythm. Even when the charts were erratic, he was slow, intentional. Some weeks he took no trades at all. He would simply annotate the 1H chart with invisible ink only he understood. He'd whisper with his fingers, tapping soft rhythms on the desk when price approached imbalance zones, as if hearing drums others couldn't. He once waited 17 hours across 2 days for a single GU setup to complete. Price rejected a supply zone twice. He waited. Price wicked again. He still didn't enter. On the 3rd test, price left an exhaustion wick and broke market structure. That's when he entered. TP hit 47 minutes later. He earned 630 euros on that trade. But more importantly, he had passed the test of patience again. He didn't just trust the chart. He trusted the silence between signals. When other traders called him too slow or joked that he must miss a lot of moves, he smiled and typed, "I'd rather miss 90% of trades and catch the 10% that respect me." Even in prop firm Slack channels, where profit updates flew around like fireworks, Luca often said nothing. He was known as the ghost. But once a month, he would drop a single annotated chart breakdown with timestamps, reasoning, and trade management. No arrows, no flashing colors, no hype. It would receive over 200 reactions every time. In February 2024, a popular trader with 250,000 followers reached out asking if Luca wanted to collaborate on a masterclass. Luca politely declined. "I am still a student," he wrote. "I don't teach the chart. I let the chart teach me." He spent more time teaching his younger sister how to use drawing tools on TradingView than engaging with trading influencers. To Luca, legacy wasn't built in public. It was built in quiet consistency, in restraint. In the hours where most traders panic and scream, Luca waited, observed, sometimes entered, often didn't. His most profitable month in 2024 brought in 4,700 euros across both funded accounts and his personal one combined. But his favorite month was June, where he took one trade, earned 120 euros, and didn't touch the charts again. That trade was perfect. And perfection, for Luca, wasn't about profit. It was about peace. Luca's bedroom had changed over the years. At first, it was a cluttered corner in his family's flat in Barcelona, with a cheap desk wedged between a dresser and the window. By 2024, it had transformed into something else entirely. A minimalist workspace with one chair, one lamp, 3 monitors, and a wall of printed losing trades. He called it the red wall. Every mistake he had ever made, impulsive entries, ignored confluence, greedy exits, was taped up, annotated with colorful pens, each one dissected like a lesson in anatomy. His friends found it morbid. His cousin joked, "It's like a serial killer shrine, but for bad trades." But Luca wasn't ashamed of losses. He revered them. He once spent an entire week analyzing a single minus 23 euros trade, breaking down not just the technical error, but his psychological state. He wrote a full page in his journal. "My hand clicked before my plan did." That's not intuition. That's impatience dressed as urgency. It was this slow, obsessive unpacking of error that sharpened him beyond his years. He didn't talk about backtesting. He lived it. On Sundays, he'd spend 4 hours replaying price action from 2017 to 2020, candle by candle, on silent mode, eyes flicking back and forth across naked charts. He wasn't looking for a setup. He was listening to market behavior like an old monk listening to scripture. His favorite setups were no longer breakouts or S&D flips. They were moments of hesitation. Moments when the market paused, faked out, and then showed its real intent. He once typed, "The chart is like a person in grief. At first it lashes out, then it withdraws. Then, slowly, it shows you what it really feels." Most traders trade the first scream. I wait for the quiet confession. By mid-2024, Luca was teaching, though he never called it that. He had a private Discord room, invitation only, for 12 traders. They weren't clients. They were comrades, people he had quietly watched for a year before inviting them. There were no signals, no live calls, just 3 rules. Every trade must be journaled in full: logic, entry, exit, emotion. No posting wins without posting the analysis beforehand. Once a week, each person must post a mistake map, a visual representation of a poor trade and what it revealed. Luca led by example. He often posted his own failed trades first, not to humble brag, but to prove that even the most silent scalper had days when the market whispered something he misread. His transparency inspired discipline, not dependence. And that was the entire point. His wall of mistakes wasn't just for him anymore. It had become a window for others, into a process few had the patience to build. He had built mastery, brick by brick, with the very trades that once broke him. By late 2024, Luca Méndez had reached a point few traders ever do, not in account size, not in fame, but in flow. The kind of internal rhythm where every session feels less like combat and more like choreography, where a trader no longer wrestles with the market, but moves with it, like water bending to gravity. That was Luca's trading now, silent, precise, fluid. He wasn't aiming to impress. He barely spoke in his own Discord. His X account, now at 78,000 followers, was still mostly emojis. Fire for impulsive breakouts, droplet for liquidity grabs, hourglass for patience. Occasionally, he'd post a full annotated chart, but only after the trade played out. Never predictive, always retrospective. It wasn't about clout. It was about clarity. His average week now looked like this: 3 sessions traded, 5 to 8 hours of pure observation, 1 or 2 actual trades. Half of his trading time was spent waiting, not analyzing, just watching. He would stare at a 15-minute chart for 45 minutes straight, without touching the mouse. Sometimes he didn't even place a trade, but every moment counted. He once wrote, "Every candle is a whisper. The market will tell you what it wants if you stop yelling back." That was his edge, silence. Not just external, but internal. Most traders lose because they panic, react, force. Luca couldn't hear news. He didn't care about FOMC. He didn't follow influencers. His only source of noise was visual, and he filtered that with ruthless precision. In fact, one of his most profitable habits was what he called the daily cleanse. Each morning before charting, he'd open his journal and write a single paragraph about his emotional state. Not trading related, just, how am I feeling? Tired. Didn't sleep well. Might overanalyze today. Feeling confident after yesterday. Watch for overtrading. He would then set a timer, 30 minutes of chart observation. No trades allowed. If he still saw the same structure form after the timer, he'd consider it valid. If it shifted, he walked away. This practice saved him from dozens of impulsive entries. In his words, "Silence is my risk filter. If I feel like trading, I usually shouldn't." His profits weren't explosive, but they were consistent. €3,000 to €4,000 a month across prop accounts. Withdrawals on the first Friday of every month. He'd split it into 3 envelopes. 1 for savings, 1 for his mother's bills, 1 for a dream he never posted publicly. A sensory art space in Barcelona, where deaf kids could experience visual rhythm through light, motion, and color. He called it Project Pulse. Most people didn't know about it, because Luca didn't need applause. He needed momentum. And as 2025 approached, Luca wasn't interested in becoming an influencer or starting a course. He wasn't building a brand. He was building a legacy, one quiet trade at a time. The first time Luca felt truly free wasn't after a big withdrawal, or a tenor trade, or passing a prop challenge. It was during a session where he placed no trade at all. It was December 12th, 2024. He had marked up his charts, identified a clean setup on Euro to US dollar. Perfect confluence. Break of structure, clean liquidity sweep, rejection wick at a 4-hour order block. It looked like textbook confirmation. Everything aligned. Everything except his breath. Luca paused, sat back, closed his eyes. He felt tension in his neck. His heart rate slightly elevated. His wrist trembled on the mouse. He didn't click. Instead, he wrote in his journal, "Everything looks clean, but I feel noise inside." And he walked away. 2 hours later, the trade would have hit stop loss. He didn't gloat. He didn't tweet a humble brag. He just wrote. The candle spoke. I listened. For Luca, that moment meant more than any payout. It confirmed what he'd come to believe, that trading isn't just strategy, it's self-awareness. That charts don't just show setups. They reveal your state of mind. And that success is not in control, but in surrender. It's a strange thing to grow up deaf in a world of sound and then become a master listener. But that was Luca's gift. He had no choice but to pay attention to everything most people ignore. Tension, tempo, micro-reactions, inconsistencies. That's what made him a great observer. That's what made him a trader. Now, in early 2025, Luca trades from a minimalist apartment above a bakery in El Raval. His desk faces a window. No second screen. Just one ultra-wide monitor, a whiteboard with 5 rules, and a single quote printed on the wall in neat handwriting. Be still. The market is already speaking. He wakes up before London session, meditates, reviews his playbook, journals his emotional state. Then he opens the charts. Some days, he trades. Some days, he watches. All days, he learns. He's still managing 200,000 euros in prop capital. Still refusing to scale fast. Still refusing to overexpose. His max risk per week, 2%. He could make more, but he doesn't want more. He wants clean. He wants calm. He wants sustainability. Because for Luca Méndez, the goal was never to win loudly. It was to live quietly, with intention, with rhythm, with purpose. At the end of this journey, if you asked him, "Do you ever wish you could hear?" he'd smile gently and write back, "Maybe once. But now? No, I don't need to hear the market. I just need to see what it's saying." And that's all he ever needed. Thank you for joining us on this chapter of Forex Success Story. Luca's story isn't just about triumph. It's about adaptation, stillness, the kind of success that doesn't need noise to prove itself. This entire series has been a walk through lives that the internet usually overlooks. The janitor, the firefighter, the single mom, the ex-pastor, the deaf scalper. But they all had one thing in common. They showed up. Every day, they watched. They learned. They didn't quit. And neither should you. If this story touched you, share it. If it reminded you that your struggle is valid, hold on to that. If it inspired you, pass that energy forward. Until the next episode, stay sharp, stay silent, and stay in the process.